Hey there, and welcome to today's Impact Ministries Disciple Making Church podcast. I am Mike Keaton, and I get to be one of the trainers here at Impact Ministries, and we're so glad that you have tuned in with us today, and we have a special treat for you today. What I have here joining me are two of who I would say are the greatest student ministry leaders. What, in all the world?
Thank you for not setting the bar low.
Yeah. So right here to my left immediately is Jesse Norton, and Jesse is the high school pastor and overall youth pastor here at Crossroads Church. To his left over here is Dominic, and Dominic is our middle school pastor.
Said it right. That's good.
And so these two guys make up our student ministry leadership, specifically with youth ministry. And super glad to have them here. And so, as you might have guessed, we are talking about student ministry today, and specifically student ministry in the context of a disciple-making church.
Right.
And so these guys are going to help us with that and talk to us about that. And we are so glad that you have joined in with us today. And so really just a big thanks to you. And hopefully this will be helpful and practical for you. So guys, let's just dive right in and really just start sharing with our viewers a little bit about what it looks like. So that's kind of the question. Jesse, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And I'm just going to ask straightforward, like, what does student ministry look like inside the context of a disciple-making church?
So, I think oftentimes about a phrase that even Pastor Ken said 2 years ago. It's the first time I heard it, at least. He said that, like, Jesus made the church the way he made it the way he wants it, and now he wants it the way he made it. And when I think about, like, that whole context is that that we can't drive a wedge between student ministry and, like, adult ministry. So it should look very similar to what adult ministry looks like.
So here's a question kind of off of that. I mean, what is the strategy for discipling students or having a disciple-making student ministry any different than the strategy that we would have for the adult, so to speak?
What you think, man?
That's a great question.
I think probably yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in the sense of, like, we need a strategy, and it should, I think about, like, a lot of what we do, like, we don't, whenever a student graduates high school, I don't want it to be a harsh transition. Like, it should not be something where they graduate high school and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, there's this whole new methodology of how we do ministry, or
that's good.
What it looks like to be a part of a church is different in the youth ministry than it is in adult. I want to blur that line. I don't want it to be such a harsh, like, okay, now, I don't want them to say, okay, now you're an adult. No, they're leading where they are.
Welcome to real disciple making now, or something like that.
Yeah, as if which, I know that like, just common vocabulary is, like, junior high is, and then you have high school. But, like, I don't want people, like, I think that we lose when we see high school ministry or middle school ministry or youth ministry as the junior league. This is not a farm system. They are literally the leaders, and, well, at least, I think that's at least the perspective that we have, is we don't see them as the future leaders. We see them just as leaders.
Yeah, that's right. That's really good. Yeah, because they are leaders now. They're the church now.
They are the church.
They're not necessarily the future church.
Yeah.
They're the church now.
Yeah.
That's really good. So, so when you think about that, I think that's great. And one of the things that, is true to our overall philosophy, and one of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast, is just that, honestly, we haven't reinvented the wheel. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel for adult ministry, student ministry, or any ministry, really. Right. We're really trying to follow the methodology of Jesus, Right. And so that's a question then. I mean, based upon what I'm hearing you say is that if you want to blur that line, which I thought that was a great way to say that, if you want to blur that line, I mean, shouldn't that be true for all student ministry? like even coming out of elementary into student ministry, like graduating fifth graders into middle school and then graduating eighth graders into high school. Shouldn't those lines all be blurred, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would even say kind of what you said, Mike, before, of this idea of we want to know where our students are going, where they're at when they graduate high school and they're on that stage, and we're recognizing them that they're fully trained into where they're going into the young adult age. And I do think it's this stepping into, or stepping blocks into, the next grade, and encouraging them to, everyone has a next step, taking that next step throughout the junior high into high school into next, and so not, like you said, blurring those lines, because I think it's easy to silo just junior high for those three grades, or silo high school, and but to kind of intermix those as they are taking those steps forward.
Well, like in you and I, we've had some I think the farther along that, like, even Dominic and I are working together and stuff, is that, like, we've done things where 8th grade joins high school. Like, so, like, they'll come over and they'll do stuff with high schoolers, and they're included in things, but not just, like, once, but, like, multiple times throughout the year. And, we do things as a youth ministry, as a whole youth ministry. Obviously, we just came back from beach camp this past week, and where it was both middle school, high school. And so we have, we have events, youth conference and stuff like that, where we want to kind of help blur that line. We don't want them to feel like there's a us and them kind of thing. It's just all of us.
Okay. So then, for a little more clarity, how does a disciple-making student ministry follow the methodology of Jesus?
Dom?
I think one of it is knowing their leader. I think building retention as far as the relationship between the leader, as far as I'm thinking just student ministries, is the leader needs to be trained before they can to lead the leader or the student. So the leader needs to be trained before they take that step of leadership. And so if they are trained and they feel confident in that way of leadership, then the student will follow the methodology of Jesus, because that's really to know, a student's not above their teacher, as it says. But there's probably
So
more
are you asking kind of like how...
Thinking more strategy-wise.
Okay.
How do you structure the ministry to follow the methods of Christ? Obviously, if you're going to have a student ministry, whether it's middle school or high school, and then you think about what's beyond that in young adult world, or maybe even adult world, there's different, you can do different things with, I guess, adults that you really can't do with students, and likewise, vice versa, you can do things different with students that you can't do. But how do all those kind of stay in line to have this disciple making philosophy as a structure, as a focus of a ministry? That's what kind of I'm getting at there.
I think what we have to do is, I know we've already talked about being intentional and strategy. Almost like we need a structure as well.
Yeah.
So we
so it
want
kind of
to
leads
move.
to intentionality.
Yeah.
So how does that look?
So, for us, practically, it looks like, obviously, small groups. Well, we move people from, our large group environments, which is on Wednesday. So we move them from that into community groups. We move them, which for high school is on Sunday nights when we do it in host homes. But all the while, all of the leaders in all of those areas are intentional about looking for students who are ready to take their next step into deeper, a deeper relationship. For a good example is, so on Sunday we had our celebration of youth, the beach camp and stuff. And so after it was over, I had 4 young men, all of them they came up to me and they said, can we get breakfast sometime? And I was like, sure, what about and what for? And they just said, we're just ready to go deeper. And all of them go to a small group on Sunday nights. And so with that, I was like, okay, awesome. Yeah, that's great. And so now tomorrow morning, we're going to go get some breakfast. And so I just texted them. I said, hey, is there anything specific that you're, and they honestly were like, well, community group is great. And a lot, we have a lot of friends and people that we believe we can pray, that can pray for us. But we just really want to know God's word more. and we don't feel like we can get that in such. I mean, those small groups are about 20 to 30 kids in there, with, and so, we want to move them from our large group environments, like our crowd, into that community group, and then from that community group into these smaller impact groups, discipleship groups. And I mean, you look at Jesus; he went from those massive crowds to his 12 to his 3, and so practically, so it seems super simple, but without intentional leadership, it won't happen. But
that's good.
I would even say, and Mike, you can speak into this too, but I think it's important when you have a student that starts from the crowd to not say, "Are you ready for discipleship?" but that they understand what it looks like to be in a small group first. And understand that core group or that small group, and then all right, I'm ready to take that next step into the core group. Because I think sometimes when we talk about structure, we lose the structure when we say, all right, we have all these students that are excited to be here, they're ready to get plugged in, all right, they're ready for discipleship. And it's like, wait, hold on, let's take a step back and let's look at what does it look like to be in a small group first, and understand to be trained in that way before becoming fully trained into a discipleship group.
That's really good. That's really good. So I'm hearing discipleship. We're talking about disciple making, church strategy, these types of things. Is there a difference? Like, is there a difference between a disciple making, a student ministry in a disciple making church, than a student ministry that does discipleship?
Yes.
Okay, talk to that a little bit.
Talking with like Lance, he goes around and talks to a lot of people with impact and promotes that, and he'll come back and he'll be like, hey man, I got this youth pastor who wants to talk to you and would like to learn more about it, what that looks like in student ministry. And I've talked to a few of them about what that looks like as far as implementing, right? And because I think that discipleship is I think it's just like a common word, it's left up to translation, however you think what that looks like and stuff like that. And so when most churches say discipleship, but like they don't have a end result, and I think that's the catalyst. That's the thing, is that true discipleship, you for lack of, to use a non-churchy term, you need to know what your product is going to look like when you're done. So we say, we want fully trained disciples. We don't just say that. What do we want to look like? And we can name them. We can list it out. This is what we believe is the character and conduct of Jesus. That's what it should look like. And so we can say that we have discipleship, but at the end of the day, at the end of the class or whatever you're using, do you know this is what we've accomplished, this is what we've invested, this is what we want to see, the kind of that end product kind of thing. So that's the difference.
That's really good. That's huge, actually. If we know where we're going, we know what it looks like when we get there, and then we can actually pattern, be intentional, strategize, build the structures, all these things we've said today that lead us toward that end, which is that fully trained disciple of a student as mature or as fully trained as they can be.
Possibly,
right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of the understanding, because that's always ongoing, right? We're always growing in that. That's really good. So you guys were saying earlier about, I think Dom, you said it just that if you don't have strategy, if you don't have intentionality, you've got chaos. Yeah. Right. And you said the word energy earlier. Just maybe. That student ministry has more energy. Than
I want to assume.
Just come to beach camp.
Right.
Oh,
man. But obviously, student ministry has always been kind of understood to be fun, to be events, to be games, to be just, and that's maybe more stereotypical, but it can also be something that identifies the student ministry. Like you were saying earlier, that line is not blurred. And, it's like, okay, when you get to the real church, that's when we're really going to try to train you up and be this fully trained disciple. But, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do we encourage student pastors out there to think beyond just the fun, the events, the beach camps, the next big summer game day or whatever.
Drinking Coke through a sock.
All the stuff we do, right? To actually, like, hey, we're making disciples. This is important ministry. So what would be maybe one thing each you guys would share with our viewers that would be helpful for them to think, okay, how can I move forward in that?
You want to go first?
You take it.
I think the first thing I would say is that as a youth pastor, you got to know where your sheep are. So you can't lead them to where you don't know where. If you don't know where you're going, then you can't take them. Or, well, I guess you will take them to there. And I think that games, I think that all that has its place. But in the context of like even just here, it's been strange over the past few years, and probably post-COVID, it probably is. Our students have had a deep desire and a passion for worship and a deep relationship to know Jesus.
That's great.
They don't care. Like I remember even after having been there here on staff for about a year, maybe 9 months to a year, with very little relational equity with these students, they came to me and they said, "Can we please stop doing the games?" And we would do like a simple game before, and they were just like, "Can we do a worship, like another song instead?"
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Yes, I love worship. Yes,
that's great."
But they've been given access to me to talk and invest in their ministry.
Okay.
And so now we still play games. We still do goofy things, and but we do it in a little bit of a different way. So like we don't start the day with games.
Mm-hmm.
We start the day with prayer or worship or something like that, because we want, and then after it's over, we may do an after party or something like that. So I believe that it has its place, but you have to know where your congregation is. You got to know where your people are.
All right.
And so
it's good. Dominic,
Yeah, I was gonna echo that a little bit of knowing the temperature of where your students are at. Because you can put on the games, you can put on the events, but if that's not what's speaking to them, then you're missing the whole point of having a youth group, because they're going to, if you're giving them what they need, then that changes the dynamic of it. But if you just give them like, well, this is a cool idea, but this isn't actually what I want, it changes the dynamic. And so I think knowing the temperature of your audience, and then I would also say for student pastors or even ministry leaders, leading yourself. I mean, being led, you mentioned being a sheep with a shepherd. Mm-hmm. If you're the shepherd of your ministry, but you're not being poured into, how are you able to lead? How are you able to keep moving? How are you able to keep
out if you have
exactly. Yeah. Because it's easy to be burnt out and think, oh, I'm going to do this event and it's not working. Well, what's not working is you haven't been in prayer. What's not working is you're not being led by someone else pouring into you, and just taking that opportunity to be fed. So
it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I love the idea, the distinction of making it between just having a youth group and moving from and this is really what we want to encourage everyone to move from a youth group to become a student ministry disciple. I'm not a disciple making student ministry.
Yeah.
I think that's just huge. We hope this has really been helpful for you today as you join us. Jesse and Dominic, these guys are doing a great job, and they're recovering a little bit today from just getting back from beach camp, but they do a great job, and we really want to help in any kind of way we can help you. If you got questions based upon today's talk, then I'm sure these guys would love to hear from you and talk to you and maybe share some of their learnings and so forth and what we do here. But we would also like to do that, so please reach out to us at impactdisciples.com. I'd also encourage you to consider if you would like to know how to incorporate some of these principles and philosophies in a disciple-making church context. Then we have actually an equipping group coming up. It's called a Disciple-Making Pastor Equipping Group. It starts July 11th. You can go to impactdisciples.com and check that out there as well. You'll see a link below where you can connect to that. And we'd love to help you in a very practical way. Join with some other pastors or other ministry leaders online in this equipping group to just kind of learn how do we just do this in our context. So that's what we're here to do at Impact Disciples and Impact Ministries. And so thankful for you joining us today. If we can help, just reach out. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you next time.